Yes. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the breakout sessions, and thank you for hanging in here with us. Final hour, but 2 panels to go, and both have amazing insights. So please stay with us and enjoy the panel discussion. We're talking about diversifying outside of China in terms of supply chain. So please welcome Kerim, Yelena, and Leandro to the stage.
There we go.
Fall in here.
How's everybody doing? Doing all right? Having a good session? All right. So we have a wonderful conversation today with 2 excellent panelists. It is on the concept of strategic diversification beyond China. We have Yelena here and Leandro. I'm going to read a little bit about their bios just to kind of give you a background on each of them. Yelena is a veteran of the fashion industry with over 20 years of experience. She graduated from the Fashion Institute of Technology in International Trade and Marketing. She continued to develop her own sense of style and direction at Li & Fung and Hanes brand before becoming Director of Product Development and Sourcing at Foot Locker. At Foot Locker, Yelena led the charge for sourced products in several high-profile product categories, including shoes, belts, cold weather accessories, and apparel. Today, as the Senior Vice President of Sourcing and Production at Komar Brands, she manages a vast team of employees in New York, Hong Kong, and Bangladesh. Happy to have you with us here today.
Thank you.
And we also have Leandro Furno. First of all, let's just talk about the fact that Leandro has been on airplanes for almost, I think, 30 hours. He dodged hurricanes in Florida, and I think he's here for about 30 minutes and then getting back on an airplane to go back to Panama. So, so he is absolutely, doing a great job for us all. Leandro has 20 years of solid experience in fashion textile industry, working for multinational companies across the end-to-end supply chain, such as North Face, Timberland Vans, and currently is leading the supply chain for the Americas at Lacoste. Let's have a round of applause for Leandro.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My pleasure.
So the topic today is really about diversification beyond China. And, for me, this is a very interesting topic because I've been in the global manufacturing space for more than 20 years. I maintain several offices in Asia. And, China has always been an important part of the manufacturing process, at least on our end. But we know that things are changing in the world and consistently do change all the time in the realm of supply chain. And so we always have to be ready to pivot, and we have to be ready to look at new opportunities and pretty much be agnostic regarding geography, but more so be focused on outcomes and having outcome-driven approach. So I'm very excited about this panel and with these 2 experts who can give their perspectives on it, and looking forward to their takes. So I'm going to just go ahead and get right into it with a couple of questions, if that's okay. And we can have sort of a back and forth discussion, if you like. The first one is for Yelena. What is the primary supply chain challenge that companies may face when pivoting away from China in your expertise?
So, the number, we've been talking about this topic for so long. We just kind of giggled on the side that this topic has probably been the conversation 10, 15 years. But this year is really the first year that we're seeing action actually happening. We're seeing 20% of my current factory matrix is opening up in regions outside of China. So they're establishing and keeping their factories within China, but moving to places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the same factories that I have in China now have a facility outside of China. So this really allows us, first and foremost, to test the region. So we're able to place the same product, same component in a small way in the new region to see how it works. Risk mitigation. That's really what we're talking about. How do you mitigate risk? Risk mitigation is by being able to make your product in several different regions, right? So like I said, to me, this is the first year that we're really seeing it. And with that does come a lot of challenges. The first challenge really from a company who does a lot of private label, and we have a lot of retailers out here, calendars are not being adjusted. Okay. So first and foremost, lead times is our biggest challenge. Market weeks are still steady. No one is changing market weeks. When we talk about mitigating outside of China, really, it's your sewing line. It's your tier one. We all know that. Our tier two, our tier three, elastics, your fabrics are still being made in China. Those components still need to get to the other regions. Without increasing your supply chain, without increasing your timeline, it's very hard to achieve. We have retailers on the one hand talking about how they want to reduce timelines, fast to market. They don't want to put in all their dollars up front. They want us to react. It's hard to react in other regions outside of China. So really, there's a lot of challenges to this, and it's everybody coming together, and I hate to say this, not hate, but partnerships. That's what we need. Retailers need to partner with manufacturers. Manufacturers need to partner with the factories.
Absolutely. I think that's all very, very valid and important points. Leandro, why is it a must that companies diversify their supply chain strategy beyond China, in your experience?
Of course, I'll totally agree with Yelena that it is not something new. It is becoming more imperative. Companies that are not doing this, they have a huge problem. It is a must because, as Yelena mentioned, you need to be flexible on your sourcing matrix. You don't need to have one source supplier that it is your main source of production. Of course, this is something obviously not easy because China will be China forever, or at least until I will be alive, it will be China. We cannot compete against China. You don't have to see it like that you need to compete against China, because if you center your strategy just to compete against China, you will lose. So you have to have partners. You have to work against your partner to develop your source near to your business. And nearshoring, that is a concept so far away. You can nearshore your production in a different ways. You can go out from China in Asia. You can go out from China in Africa, Turkey, but also in my case that I'm leading Americas. In Americas, there is a lot of opportunities to diversify your source from China. But in my opinion, you have to be part of that strategy. You don't have to just find the best partner. You have to set up local talents. You have to set up local know-how. They are the one that they will develop a competitive product in terms of lead time, in terms of cost. And the last thing in my case, it does to make sense what you are doing. You don't have to go out from China because you have to do it. You have to do it because it's imperative, because you have to compete with your competitors in terms of cost and lead time, but do not look for go out everything from China. You have to balance your sourcing matrix and find the correct source in terms of the type of product that you are producing.
So that's very important and key points to have diversification at all times. Yelena, I mean, in your perspective, what countries are emerging as viable alternatives for you for manufacturing and sourcing outside of China? And how does the role of nearshoring play into your strategy?
I have to say, I wish the nearshoring played a bigger part of my strategy. Like you said, there are so many amazing facilities and partners, right here close to in country. And it's very difficult because cost wins. So much of the time, it is hard to get management to move away from the cost aspect and see all the benefits of nearshoring. Right now, our major countries that we're pivoting to is Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and Indonesia, actually, in intimate apparel is emerging. But nearshoring, like I said before, we're having those conversations with our tier 1 sewing partners. We, as suppliers, as retailers, need to start engaging with tier 2 and tier 3 and having those same conversations that we are with our sewing facility and explaining and pushing why it's so important for those manufacturers to nearshore, for those manufacturers, for your fabrics, for your packaging, for your elastics, for them to be opening up arms of their facilities closer to in country where your product is being sewn. It's imperative we push them. We pushed our tier 1 suppliers. For years, they said, yes, we're going to open up new factories, until this year when, the election is looming and a 60% tariff is hanging over. If it's going to happen or not is the first time that we're actually seeing groundbreaking facilities opening. So we got to do the same thing with tier 2, tier 3, and push them to open up closer to countries, smaller facilities, but more of them. And that would allow us as companies to nearshore easier. That would allow our timelines to fit within nearshoring. If we're sewing here, but all your materials are still coming from China, you're not reducing your timeline. A bra is 32 components. So just think about all those materials that have to be at the factory at the same time to even start production. So it just makes things very difficult when your supply chain is all globally and all over the place. How do you bring it closer together?
I agree. And Leandro, I mean, how should be an approach and strategy between kind of local and regional in your perspective?
It is what I mentioned previously. I think it's not just going out from China and think on Asia. You have to think more globally in terms of the correct balance between the local for local production versus the regional production versus the global collection. It's not easy, but the balance between those three horizon on the source of the production will be the best. But going to Yelena's point that is very, very important, all the tiers, you have to consider the tiers on that strategy to balance local, regional, and global to understand at the end the cost of how we will move the materials and the commodity of the product that you are producing. Again, for me, the key part is that it's not just to find the correct partner, it's to be there with the partner. You have to reinforce the strategy with them. If you need to set up teams locally in the place that you are producing, you have to do it. If you have to set up teams regional, you have to do it. As the same as many companies have in Asia, mainly in China, there are a lot of companies that are moving their hub from Hong Kong to Singapore because they need to be there with their partner. Of course, the partner has to do what they have to do. You don't have to produce, but you have to ensure the NDA of your brand to be presented on the production flow from tier 1 to tier 5. For us, Peru is 70% of our production in the region. And why Peru is our 70%? Because we have the cotton, we have the fiber, we have the cotton, we have the yarn, we have the fiber, we have the fabric, and we have the manufacturing in Peru. It is cheaper than China? No, of course. But again, landed cost in our Americas market, it is cheaper. And then when you compare landed cost versus landed cost, it is not always which is the best cost. You have to consider problematics or disruption that could happen. Transportation is an example. I mean, we can buy this polo in China 20 cents less landed cost. 20 cents less in the transportation problem was nothing. So at the end, you don't need to move 100% local, you don't need to move 100% region, and you don't have to have 100% global. The correct balance for me is the best way, and you always, every season has to review your strategy. It's not something that you will define and it will keep 2-3 years. Every season you have to review your sourcing strategy.
Diversification is very important in supply chain. We all know that, and to have a good plan, A, B, C, D, and even Z sometimes. But let's talk about what happens when you balance, or companies have to balance, diversifying geography with still ensuring reliability and resilience within their supply chain. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, just to go back to what I was saying earlier, we really found that with having the same factory in 2 regions, being able to have the same garment approved, being able to have your materials ready to go and grayish fabric available in both facilities has really helped us to be, flexible. It's really allowed us being able to test markets, and it allowed us to be flexible. I think sustainability is going to play a big part into this. As we move and are able to move technology, be able to do more 3D fittings, that is going to really play such a vital part in being able to produce and manufacture garments in various regions. We all know that, a pattern made here and a pattern made there is always going to be slightly different by hand. The sewing is slightly different. But once we can move past that into a technology point where we're approving fits, and Factory A in China and Factory B in Vietnam are all seeing the same thing as your design, your tech team, in the US, and approving that at the same time, that's going to add even so much more flexibility for us.
And Leandro, as far as you're concerned, I guess, benefits and risks of diversification strategy?
Well, mainly is what I mentioned. I think the big benefit is to have a flexible strategy, to not have one source dependencies. And this is independent of China. I mean, you don't have to put all the eggs in the same basket. So diversification against China is, of course, the big benefit is that flexibility and the risk management if something happens in our supply chain. The risk, I will say that you have to be sure where you will be reallocating your production. In Americas, We have very good sources, we have very good materials, we have commodities, we have everything. But again, we are not China. So you need to be careful. You need to choose your correct partner. You need to go little by little. You need to test. If you are going to change something in your sourcing matrix, test it. We are producing in Peru 70%, but we start with 5%. We test it. We test the product in the sale. We test the consumer, because it's not the same made in China or made in France for us or made in Peru. Consumers are seeing the label. They know, and they want to know how the products are produced. For example, now we are introducing the traceability label on our products, so every consumer will see all from tier 5 to tier 1 when that polo that they buy was produced. So the risk is mainly on capacity and capabilities of the vendor that you are going to choose. So make sure to test it.
I mean, in my experience, when it comes to aspects of transparency and visibility, I mean, eyes and ears on the ground, beats anything. But I guess as we're discussing this, Yelena, in your opinion, what does the role of transparency play in making decisions to diversify? And how do you ensure that you do have full visibility into your supply chain?
So this year for Komar, traceability and transparency is really our key goal. It is imperative that we know all the tiers, as Lacoste is doing, and showing the consumer exactly where their product is coming from, down to the fiber. That is what all garments are going to have. I mean, we're getting to the regulations of every garment having a label where you will know from fiber to store every step of the process. So traceability and mapping your supply chain, we are now going through the process of building an integrated, full mapping BOM platform. That is where our key strategy is for this year. We need to know every component. We go in to inspect our sewing facilities and don't inspect our elastics or where our fabric, which is the biggest portion of your garment, is your fabric. And we're not going in to inspect those facilities. That's not going to be okay anymore. It is now imperative that we know, inspect. We have the same standards for your sewing facility, for your elastic mills, for your dye houses. Every step of the process is going to have to go through the same vigorous inspection process, testing process, mapping process, knowing exactly your entire supply chain from start to finish. So, and the only way I feel that we're going to know that is through technology. It's really going to be technology at this point. There are just too many facets of what goes on in making garments and making products and we need to know every step. And factories are going to have to, if they want to do business with US, with EU, disclose those. And those are the factories, the best suppliers are the ones that are going to last. Those are the facilities that are going to, they're going to win. And no matter what region, it's going to be in China or in Vietnam. And I think that the benefit of the factories that are building in Vietnam and the new facilities building is that we're demanding more sustainability from them. So they're able to put those practices and build them right into the foundation. They're able to build that. We've done something this year. We've hired a director of sustainability, and we went in to work with our already existing matrix. Out of our entire matrix, only one facility one facility didn't make it, that we had to cut ties with them because they had no coal elimination, strategy. But every other facility that we work with, and we have a huge matrix, was happy to comply with us, was happy to work with us. They're happy to map their supply chain if we show them how, if we give them the tools necessary and show them how that's done. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're working with our partners. We're going in there and we're not saying do this. We're giving them the tools to do it. We're showing them how to do it. We're building this mapping system for them so that we can all have better visibility. So when, the product passport does come into effect, we're going to be ready for it. We're going to be ready to show our consumers the entire supply chain of how their products are made. And we're going to be proud of it.
Leandro, similar to you, same thing. How does technology and digital transformation support your diversification efforts, specifically in terms of visibility, efficiency, and risk management? And what best practices is Lacoste putting in place?
Of course, I will not repeat what Yelena mentioned. It is somehow technology will help us to do the traceability thing. I will say that it depends on the chain within the supply chain. If you are looking for demand prediction or forecast accuracy, that is one of the challenges to execute a strategy or sourcing strategy or a strategy of diversification against China. The demand prediction, of course, it's a must, it's a need, and technology, AI, now it's a great tool to help us predict the demand. It is not, in my opinion, it is not yet there to exactly predict your demand, but it is very good to do exercise of different scenarios. At the end, you have to choose the scenario and the risk and opportunities that you are seeing in each of the markets. So in terms of demand, for me, is a key part of that to then execute your sourcing strategy. And then in terms of supply, when you have to execute your supply to match your demand, robotics, technology in the factory, it is a reality that help us to gain efficiency in your capacity, because at the end you have a demand and then you have to match the supply with that, and to be efficient on the matching between supply and demand. So AI, technology, new tools, robotic is always helping. There is no one receipt of to reply to the question, but be curious, test everything. Do not be shy of testing, or try everything that you see in the market. Is the only way. Do not apply it immediately. Test it, and you will get at least something new.
Now, this has been a very captivating and intriguing discussion, of course, with you excellent panelists, veterans in the industry. Maybe we could open it up for a question or two right before we close. Would anyone in the audience like to pose a question? Yes, please. We have two.
I was just curious, as you think about counterfeiting, and specifically Lacoste and the croc, how does that play into your decision-making in terms of testing new vendors and gaining their trust as it relates to counterfeiting?
Yeah, it's a good one. The croco is everywhere. You have different type of croco with one teeth, two teeth, one eye, three eyes. First of all, you have, of course, to consider to have a legal support to go through all the counterfeiter or fake products that is going around. And you have to be careful on the vendor you choose. We have very long agreements with our vendors. We are not changing the vendor from one season to another. The croco, it's only produced in 3 vendors in the world. 1 for Americas, 1 from Europe, and 1 from Asia. It is not easy to produce the croco. It is easy to produce our polo, but the croco is coming from only 1 vendor in Americas. So again, counterfeiting will be forever. We cannot stop that, but you need to be careful on the vendor you choose and do long-term agreement.
I think we have one more question in the back.
Thank you very much. Very interesting panel. One question I have is, how do you manage the quality control process with all of these different vendors? And especially when you're talking about trialing vendors, what does that look like? How do you maintain the standardization of quality?
I mean, I'll say for Komar, it's, boots on the ground. We have inspectors that we sent in, our own inspectors. We have standards that are set in place. We have our QA, QCs all there. And we all know, we have the garment that everything has to match. So, we get those reports. And so it's very important. And that's another reason why having that factory that has already done it, and most of the time they'll send the same quality manager to open up their facility, in another region, really helps us manage our quality control.
In our case, just to add something, it's almost the same, but in the case of Lacoste, of course, we have certified supervisors in each of the vendors. It is not Lacoste headcount, but they are certified by Lacoste.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really, let's give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists for an excellent discussion. Thank you so much.